First and foremost, thank all you guys who have become members to our channel. I really appreciate the help and the support, man. For you guys who haven't become members, first you gotta subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys subscribe. There's a red button that looks just like this. Hit that button, you subscribe for free. Next to that button, the subscribe button, there's gonna be a join button. That join button helps us create content, helps us get this movement going, and helps us bring awareness to gangs, poverty, drugs, and anything else we speak on this channel. This channel, we're trying to actually help educate Raza, but we need help from you guys, and hopefully you guys can kick in, get with the program, become members, man. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy this next podcast. Have a good day. Bye. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of West Coast Street Knowledge. I'm your host, Gil, aka the American Cholo. I got my co-host Sonny in the house.
Hey guys.
And today I got a guy who really needs no introduction, man. He's one of the OGs in the game. I've been doing this shit since the 90s, before people even knew what the gangs were in most places, unless they lived in your neighborhood.
That's true.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Alex Alonso. Started my website in 1995.
Was it 95?
It was 95. I put it on a university server. It wasn't on streetgangs.com yet. I didn't know anything about a domain name. But when I was a student at USC,
right,
and USC gave you your own digital space to create whatever you wanted to create. So I created a little gang page in 95, and it started to, even in 95, it was really popular for the small internet audience that did exist at that time. And then by 98, I was like, let me go buy a domain name. And I didn't know what to buy because it was actually, the website was usc.edu/AlexAlonso/gangs. So everything was under that URL.
Right.
And then somebody told me about a domain name. You should get your own domain name. I didn't know what that was. And back then, you won't believe how much a domain name cost, because now you can go to GoDaddy and buy it for like $10, $15.
All right.
But it was only one company that had them back then, called Network Solutions, and they charged $75 for a domain name. So I paid $75, got my streetgangs.com in 98, and been growing ever since.
And that was what year did YouTube start?
YouTube started in the end of 2005.
So you had this shit before YouTube even kicked in.
I actually had videos on my website embedded with a program called Real Player.
Okay.
It was a program that you could use to copy and paste the code, and it would put a video player on your page. I also used a couple other ones, I forget the name. So yeah, I had
MySpace, right? You were put it on MySpace
before MySpace.
Yeah, this is way before.
Yeah, we're talking. MySpace is the 2000s. We're still in the 90s here.
Yeah, the computers weren't even really that much in the 90s. It's the early 2000s.
Yeah, my first computer was a 386 model, which meant the processor was 4, and then I went to 486. And my first laptop had 4 gigabytes. The entire laptop was 4 gigabytes. Now I'm buying a 500 gigabytes and 1 terabyte.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was embedding video before YouTube on the streetgangs.com platform. And then in 2006 is when I created the YouTube page, when YouTube was just a few months old.
So let's rewind it back a little bit now. Where were you born, first of all?
I was actually born in New York City in the borough of the Bronx.
Okay.
My parents were from Puerto Rico. And I actually was born in the projects. I was born in the McKinley Housing Projects on 161st, and it's actually the birthplace of hip hop.
Yeah.
Right next to the McKinley Projects is what you have the Forest Projects. So technically, I would say the Forest Projects is the birthplace of hip hop, but it's really like one continuous group of buildings. You could walk to the Forest Projects, and everyone I think has acknowledged that the Bronx is where all the hip hop elements started.
Were you how old were you when you guys left the projects and came out here to LA?
Well, we left the projects before I came to LA. We bounced around a few different areas in New York. But I came to LA in 1981 when I was about 11.
Okay, so you're coming from the East Coast or hopping around and you come to LA. 81, man, that's deep. Well, where did you move to at the time?
I moved to an area that was known as Planton area in the mid Wilshire. That was my first neighborhood. And I actually had a cousin, and my cousin had a close friend, which we considered a cousin too, that was from Planton. And that was my first introduction to LA gangs.
Real quick.
Yeah, like immediately. In fact, in 1981, we called him our cousin. His name was Manny. He caught a murder or attempted murder. And he got that, 14, back then they gave you 14 years and you did half.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I think he got 15 years for attempted murder, did half.
Yeah,
so he
yeah.
got out in like late 88 or 89, and then he got killed like within months of getting out. But because he got caught up in the politics in prison, and
Right.
and he didn't last long when he came home. But yeah, lived in the Mid Wilshire area, and then I went to a middle school called John Burroughs Junior High, where it was nothing but gang members there from all different areas.
So did you have friends from different neighborhoods?
Yes, I did. As soon as I got to John Burroughs, I started meeting dudes from. There was a little known gang called MS.
A little known gang.
Yeah. Back then it was little known. This is 80. I got to John Burroughs in 1982.
Okay.
So MS started in 79. So this is a neighborhood that's been out for 3 years. And most of the dudes from MS went to Berendo Junior High. But John Burroughs was the next school over. So if you got kicked out of Berendo, or if your parents didn't want you to go to Berendo, you came to John Burroughs. So they were kind of like stoners. It was the heavy metal scene back then. It was heavy metal music. All the Mexicans was wearing Iron Maiden, Sid Vicious.
I remember that. Yeah.
All the heavy metal dudes, AC/DC shirts, ripped sleeves off, letting their hair grow long.
Right.
And that was the MS guys. Also, there was another neighborhood called Mid-City Stoners that went there. They dressed exactly the same way. There were some 18th Street guys. There were some Rolling 30s Crips. There were some Black P Stones. Mansfield Hustlers. Mansfield Hustlers was the most dominant gang at John Burroughs because their neighborhood was close to it, and they ended up becoming Mansfield Gangster Crips later.
Okay.
So yeah, I was making friends with these people from all these neighborhoods. In fact, my yearbooks, I saved them all. My 82, 83, and 84 yearbooks, I would just tell people, can you hit up? Hit up your hood. And I got, when you look at it, it's just all gang writing in these yearbooks, and it's just funny to look back at it.
So how did you stay away from that gang scene?
Well, I don't know if I actually stayed away from it because I lived within it. I lived among it. But I think the difference for me was I had a strict father. I had a father that didn't really tolerate a lot of nonsense and always embedded in my head like every day to the point where this guy was annoying. But when you look back at it, it was like, you saved my life.
That's right. That's right.
And I ended up going to college. I ended up going to USC, a school that people said they'll never let you in that school, Alex. And I really thank and appreciate, my dad, rest in peace. He passed in 2015, but if it wasn't for him, streetgangs.com wouldn't even exist.
That's right.
What got you fascinated with the gang so much?
When I touched down in LA, as soon as I met my cousin and
Just fascinated.
Plus, when I was in New York, and my family also from the streets, my father's brother, Tito, Fernando Rodriguez, rest in peace, started a gang in the 50s called the Puerto Rican Tigers, which became a really known gang in the 50s and 60s before I was born in the Bronx. And then I looked at old photos of my dad. He used to run with a crew called the Lucky Knights of Wales. But back then, once you turned 18, 19, you went to the military or you got a job at a factory. My father ended up going into the Marine Corps. So the street days was kind of over for him. But the streets are still in you no matter what.
Yeah,
so I'm growing up, I got this uncle that started a gang, I got my dad, and then all my other relatives, we all from the streets. So when I got to LA, it was really just an extension of what I had already grew up around.
Right. So then you go to USC, and that's when I think you started the actual gang stuff and doing your research, right?
Yeah, that's when I really thought, this is when I figured out, wow, you can actually study this stuff. I mean, I had always been interested in it. I've read every single book and newspaper article before I even got to SC. I was reading, Leon Bing was an author. I used to think it was a guy. It turns out to be a white woman using the name Leon Bing. And I used to read all her stuff in the LA Weekly in the 80s. And I had them all. I clipped them all out. And I was like, wow, who is this Leon Bing person? I'm fascinated with this history. It's the very first article that I've ever read about specific LA gang history. It came out in 1988. And that kind of got me interested. I was like, wow. And then I'm still fresh out of high school at that time.
Right.
But then after that, there was some other stuff that had got me interested. I can't remember what it is now, but I have to credit. I never met Leon Bing, but a lot of people always ask me, how you get started or what got you interested in it. Reading that 1988 LA Weekly article was very fascinating to me, and then watching Chris Blatchford on Fox 11 News in the late 80s do these stories about the Godfather of the Crips or the Bloods or the Mexican Mafia. This guy was doing everything on a gang level before anybody was doing it. So I actually became friends with Chris Blatchford over the years. So, and he was doing his thing 87, 88, 89. And then when I got to USC, I met these two professors that were studying gangs. And then that's when I said, this is what I want to do. I want to research gangs. So I was like, how do I do this? And I got to mention Malcolm Klein, who is very elderly now. He's probably probably late 80s. And then James Diego Vigil, who wrote a book called Barrio Gangs in 1988. I just happened to be at USC when Malcolm Klein was teaching in the sociology department. Right. Diego Vigil was teaching in the anthropology department. This is 1993 when I was a junior, and I just met these guys, and that's when I said, I want to do what you guys are doing.
Can you're making a living doing this, right?
Well, in terms of all of my jobs collectively, yes. Okay. But a lot of people just think, oh, the YouTube channel, you're making a whole lot of money on it. No, I mean, I teach, I've taught over the years. I've been teaching on and off for 20 years. Also, I consult in the courts. Spend a lot of time consulting in the courts. Right now, I have like 30 legal cases on my desk.
So sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, Alonso's a fucking cop. Alonso is this." Talk to us and take us through what you do in the court system.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have never been a police officer. I have never been employed with any law enforcement agency at all. I have never testified on the behalf of. I never testified against a gang member. Right. I'm hired by the defense.
Okay. So
we create a strategy to defend, especially when there's a gang allegation. State of California has what's called a 186.22.
Yeah.
If you look that up, it's when they can attach an allegation to a crime you've committed. And the allegation is you either did something for the benefit, in association, or in direction of a gang.
Right.
And this law actually came out in '88, but they didn't really heavily prosecute it until you got to the 2000s. Okay. And that's when lawyers started calling me out to help. They would read my articles, they would read things that I published, and one lawyer said, "Hey, I think this guy Alex Alonso could help us on this case." This was back in 2000, 20 years ago. I helped him on the case, didn't think anything of it, and then the next thing I knew, lawyers were calling me up. I would do maybe 5 cases a year in the first, from 2000 to 2005. Right. But now I'm doing 50 cases a year.
Wow. That allegation you're talking about is heavily prosecuted in the 2000s? Because I have that 186.22.
Yeah.
Mine was in 91.
Well, then you were one of the first ones. You got hit with a 186.22 in 91.
Yeah.
You probably one of the first ones. That got hit with it. Just
I never, I knew what it was. I just didn't know that it was heavily prosecuted.
They didn't really prosecute it a lot in the 90s. It's hard to find a lot of cases where they used a gang allegation in the 90s because a lot of the prosecutors didn't even know what the heck it was. They didn't know what to do because that was a state legislation that did it in Sacramento. Okay. And I believe James Hahn, who was an LA politician at the time, he was the actual, he was city attorney and then he became he was a councilman and then became city attorney and then became mayor. But he helped author 186.22. But a lot of the prosecutors were not knowledgeable of how do you use it, what's it for.
Well, my DA was Mark Arnold. You probably know him.
Mark Arnold, he's a judge now, isn't he?
Yes. He was actually involved in the Rampart scandals, but he was my prosecutor attorney. He's the one that came from, he actually handpicked his cases, and it was from Sacramento. He came up from Sacramento down here to
okay. So I think Mark Arnold was probably more advanced as a prosecutor. I mean, he's a judge now.
He's a prick.
But to your point about these people that say I work for the police, I would have to say that's 90% trolls. Right. Because everyone that's on a penitentiary yard right now, that's in prison right now, who knows who I am, knows who I am. Of course. So I get calls from prisons all the time because people have cell phones to help them their cases.
Right.
The real world out here knows that I've never been associated, so it's just weird to see people post that sometimes. Most of the time it's trolls. I actually tracked one troll to 10 different accounts.
Oh shit.
10 different accounts, you know, and that one troll is always posting the same thing. This troll gives himself away because he says the same things about me.
Right.
And it turns out this troll's not even in the United States. It's from a whole other country in the UK. So, you know,
I think a lot of that's from I think a lot of them talking about you is they just don't know who you are. They just want to be their voice opinion because you are pretty famous. So.
You know how many times people have come up to me and wanted to fight me, wanted to knock me out or do something to me? How many times do you think that's happened? Never.
That's what's up.
Never happened.
That's what's
You
up.
know,
No,
if that was the case, people would be on my head.
yeah, of course.
You know, and if you notice, I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm everywhere. So I'm not really worried about it. Everyone in Los Angeles County, from the Valley all the way down to Long Beach, they know who I am.
That's right. Okay, so now you're in college. You're meeting up with all these professors, different guys that are all into they're actually ahead of you into the gang stuff, and you want to follow them, right?
Way ahead.
Well, I don't know about now. I think you might have caught up by now, Alonso. So then your original YouTube. What was your first YouTube video that you put on? Was it on the street gangs?
Yeah, I think my first two YouTube videos, I did them together. I did a short clip of T. Rogers, who's the founder of Black Peace Don't Blood from Los Angeles, and I did a short clip of Mad Ronald, who's from Westside Rolling 20s. This was like a minute clip.
Right.
I actually did long interviews with them, but I was just trying to figure out the YouTube thing, so I took a 1 minute clip of T. Rogers, a 1 minute clip of Mad Ronald, and I just posted it. I think I posted that in 06.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when did the views start coming? When did you start seeing? Wait a minute, I might be on something here.
Well, those views started coming immediately because back then there was only like 5,000 YouTube channels.
Is that all it was?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Because back then they used to rank all the channels, so you can go on YouTube and you can see where you're at in terms of your subscribers and your views. And if you had like 4,000 subscribers, you was viral. Yeah, because we're talking about the first few months of YouTube.
For sure.
And I remember when I got to I was one of the first ones to get to 5,000 subscribers at that time, and it was a big deal. But there have been some years where I kind of didn't have time for YouTube. There's a big gap.
Oh, was there?
In the YouTube, yeah, from like I don't remember the years, but like 2008 or 9. I may not have done a lot of videos,
Really?
But in the early YouTube years of 06, 07, yeah, I was, but I didn't know where it was going. You couldn't, there was no monetization at that time.
Right.
If you were on YouTube in 05 or 06, you did it for the passion.
Right.
You did it for the culture. You did it for the educational process.
Absolutely.
You know, so no one can say I came on YouTube because I'm trying to monetize videos. Well, check out when I started. There was no monetization. Monetization came in when Google bought YouTube. Because YouTube was independently owned by these other cats, and then they sold it to Google
For big money.
For big money. They probably should have held out. They could have got probably more money. But also, it's a tough platform to manage because they have to store all our videos on servers. On drives like as big as this room.
Okay.
And after a while, it kind of gets too hard to manage. So maybe that's one reason why they sold it.
But something tells me that even when it's monetized, like, you still don't do it for the money.
You still don't, but I just say that just to let people know. I was posting videos before there was YouTube.
Right.
And there was no such thing as monetization of videos. It's a good thing that they integrated that in because at least it kind of lets us break even and make a little something on how we feel. Look at your setup here. Look, I know what this costs. I know that it's an investment.
Absolutely.
And this is work. Sitting here chatting with me.
Yeah.
But it's also educational.
Absolutely.
It's also contributing to the culture. It's also putting a message out there, which is just as important. But yeah, I've seen YouTube go through all kind of changes from the beginning, and it's continuing. It's like right now they're bringing in the YouTube studio and changing everything up, and it's like, damn, I don't know where to find anything anymore.
I want to go with the classic stuff.
Yeah, I want to keep classic, but now they're telling me classic is going to go away. So it's just another change. But that's what I've been going through YouTube since it started. Since I was uploading videos, everything would change, and that's what technology is. Everything changes.
A lot of people ask me this, and I'm going to ask you. Some people, maybe not in LA or different parts of town, believe that the gang violence and the gang killings and going to prison is over with, that it's something that's no longer in the communities. What would you say to somebody who thinks that?
I would say that's a negative. Violence has certainly dropped in the last decade, last 10, 15 years, but I'm working in the courts every week. I see people getting sentenced to. The sentencings today are way more over the top than they were back in the day.
Yes.
You used to be able to maybe you can in the 70s you can do a murder and get out in 7 years.
Yeah.
But don't you think that getting out in 7 years contributed to the gang violence getting worse and worse?
It depends on it could have, but I know people that did a murder in the 70s got out and never went back. For example, Bobby Creer, who I interviewed on my channel, rest in peace, he just died in December.
Right.
He went to prison in 1972 for a murder, got out in 79 and never went back.
Right.
But then his co-defendant, Judson Baycott, went to prison for that same murder, got out. He got out in 83 and then went back again.
Yeah.
And then went back again. So it all depends. But you might be right on that. I've never looked at it statistically, but also I think that some of this, like a lot of people will say that when you give a juvenile another opportunity to get out of prison, you're contributing to what you just said, crime. And I believe that when you give a juvenile a sentence where it allows them to come home at the age of 25, most of those guys that get out at 25 after sitting in YA for 10 years are not repeat offenders. Some are, but most are not. They don't. Now, if you commit a murder when you're 16, you're going to the penitentiary for 50 years.
That's wrong.
It is, So remember, they used to have that juvenile life.
Yeah.
You get out when you're 25.
Yeah,
if you're fit,
you max out at 25.
you max out at 25.
Yeah.
How many people are getting that now?
No, nobody.
Nobody gets that for a murder anymore.
Just before I paroled, I was in the yard and there was this kid. Came in, attached to us, and we were kicking it with them. And I was talking to him, 16 years old. I was like, what the hell are you doing in prison?
Wow.
But they were sending they started, just when I was leaving, they were starting to send 16.
Was that a reception yard? Or
No, a
bang
bang line.
A bang line
We were
yard?
up on Centinela B yard. And this kid was 16 years old. And I told him, what'd you do, commit murder? No, I just got a couple robberies.
Wow.
Like, damn, he's already up
I think when because I was in YA for all those years and I kept going in and out banging, but I was a young guy, still didn't know the reality of life.
Yeah.
And by the time I got out, I was about 24 years old. And it gave me an opportunity to grow up. Now that the prison politics take over, because then you start getting a little more, a little hardcore and this and that. So you send these 16-year-old guys to prison, man. Yeah, you're setting up for failure.
Yeah, it is actually insane because we do know the brain is still developing until you're 25 years old.
And that's what changed in the law recently, correct?
I don't know.
That's why people are getting out of jail.
Oh yeah, some people are getting out, but you're still, if you commit a murder, if you're 14 and a half and over, you're going to get tried as an adult.
Do you know why they started closing out these authorities in California?
I haven't had a chance to look into that, and that's something that we need to look at.
Right.
But one of the reasons why I would think is because they changed the laws for trying juveniles as adults years ago. So there is no way that you commit a serious offense if you're 14 and a half and over and you're not getting tried as an adult. So now it's almost like, why do you need a juvenile system now when we're sending 90 or 80% of our teenage offenders to prison anyways? Where back in the 70s and 80s, if you committed a murder, you could go to YA if you were 15 years old.
Of course.
That's not happening. You are getting tried as an adult, and once you're convicted, you're going to one of these yards that Sonny just mentioned.
So pretty much you took their clientele.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons you took the clientele away from the
Right.
YA system and you sent them to the CDC.
But now the California is fucking having such a hard time trying to house all these people.
Yeah, because it's not designed to house almost 200,000 inmates. Well, now they let a lot of people out. I don't know what the population is now, but it was up to 180, 190,000 inmates in 33 prisons.
That's nuts.
So you do the math on that. How many people can be on one? Now the prison news had 4 yards, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Each yard probably could have comfortably 500 people.
Yeah.
but they're putting 700,
Oh,
800,
yeah.
1,000, right?
Just before I left, they had actually put bunks inside the day rooms. Left one cell open to use the restrooms, and they were just packed. Three stacks of bunks in Centinela. And Centinela was a violent place. So I'm like, damn, these. But yeah, things are changing dramatically over there. I don't know.
So now that you speak to a lot of guys in prison, what's the mindset of people in prison right now? Are they thinking about getting out? Are they hoping to kind of change the way people think, or what are these guys trying to do?
Man, a lot of guys that are, I would say, not even, I was gonna say 50 and over, but I know some dudes that are in their 40s because they've been in there 20 years, 25 years. They realize this was all for nothing.
That's right.
They want to see a change, and they want to be a part of the process too.
That's right.
A lot, and this is a great thing because just because you're in prison doesn't mean you cannot reach us.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you cannot have influence, and this is why a lot of these ceasefires are going on right now. A lot of it is influence. I would say not a lot. I would say all of it. Let's keep it real. All of it is influence from prison.
Right.
And that's why we have to commend these brothers, because right now the city of Inglewood is safer than it was a year ago.
Absolutely.
That would not have happened if I wasn't able to connect with guys in prison.
We had a discussion about that a while back. I mean, we were discussing it, and without touching on structure or anything in prison, but they've always had a strong influence on the streets from prison. So it's
No doubt.
whatever they decide is what's going to happen.
But it used to be a real negative influence, I believe. Now it seems like it's going for the better, or at least I hope.
Well, they're realizing that one brother and shooting and killing another brother doesn't help or advance us at all. Just because we have a rivalry or just because we have a beef doesn't mean it has to lead to killing. So, for example, this is crazy. I'm going to give you something that not too many people even heard, but I was present in a meeting with a lot of the Vados from the West Side, and also 2 inmates were present in the meeting through a cell phone on what's called FaceTime.
Right.
So they are listing the rules. There's new reglas now in town.
All right.
And one of them is we are not firing upon each other anymore. But if there's a beef, we can handle the beef. But you're gonna have to have a conversation about it first. You guys wanna fight?
That's right.
Fine, but there is no picking up a gun and shooting another dude from another Vario again. Now this is only for this part of town.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's not citywide, it's not countywide.
Right.
But hopefully we can get there. But this is just one step. So to hear these guys from prison on FaceTime telling a group of 30 people, these are the rules now. And everyone is nodding in agreement, saying, okay, that's what it is. And then after the meeting's over, to see guys shaking hands that are from neighborhoods that hate each other,
Right.
I'm sitting there in amazement.
That's right.
And I'm like, I'm a part of this too. Like, I'm sitting there saying, wow, I helped organize this.
Right.
But it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for these guys behind the walls.
That's right.
You know? And thank goodness that they have cell phones. Because it makes communication so much easier with these guys. And you know what? The police in there know.
Yeah.
They know they got phones.
Of course.
I'm talking to a very high-ranking dude in prison, and he tells me they know I got a phone. They're not tripping on that. They're just tripping on some other stuff. They don't trip on the phone. For him, at least.
Yeah.
But I do know another guy. He told me he got his phone taken. You know, but he wasn't a high-ranking dude in prison.
Right.
So this guy, I guess, is hands off for the police. Let him do his thing.
I think if they know if he's facilitating peace and trying to work that, they're kind of
Well, we're not so sure if they support the peace.
Really?
I'm not so sure if the prison COs and even if local law enforcement is really supportive of the peace process. I'm just a little skeptical, but you know, we hope that they would think, hey, there's less conflict, less violence, less killings. That's what everyone wants for their city.
Well,
Right.
I personally believe they don't want peace because if it is, that's job loss for them.
Yeah.
This, violence is job security for, the police, gang prosecutors, those guys make their money.
Well, you're right, Sonny. The police are in the crime business.
Yes, of course.
But if crime drops, the police are still getting paid.
Yeah.
They're still making their money. It's not like, oh, hey guys, there's been a 50% drop in crime last year, so we're gonna have to lay off 100 officers. That ain't gonna happen. So I understand what you're saying. They're in the crime business, and they have an incentive for crime to exist.
Right.
Yes.
But at the same time, a lot of the local law enforcement and local city politicians, they get accolades when they can say, hey, crime is down. Hey, robberies are down. You know, all these other crimes are down, because that's how they gain support and get reelected again as well.
Right.
You know? So I don't know. I'm skeptical though. I don't really trust law enforcement involved in our peace process. And this is a beautiful thing too. They're not in no way part of these conversations. They're not allowed in our meetings. They're not allowed to even come on the property of this building that we use.
Right.
Even though they want to. They want to pull up and just see what's going on. They're not allowed to. And frankly, we don't need them. You know, this is something that should be governed by ourselves.
Our community.
Yeah, our community should be able to come together and figure this out.
I think like the police officers, they're just skeptical because they see a lot of brothers getting together. They see a lot of essays getting together, and they definitely fear us getting together and stop fighting one another. They might think we're gonna fight them or something's gonna happen.
They don't want us to organize. That's what.
Yeah,
Basically, what it is.
I don't know what to say. It would be nice. Like sometimes you hear law enforcement speak at these press conferences, and they say all the right things. They say like, you know, we want to bring peace to the community, or they'll even attend community events.
Right.
You'll see them pull up at the park and shake hands, and they even have a thing called GRYD, GRYD, Gang Reduction Youth Development Program. That comes out of the mayor's office,
Right.
and it's facilitated by the LAPD as well. And they got them all over from the valley all the way down into the city, and I don't trust it.
Right.
But I know people that work for GRYD that are from different hoods. GRYD employs a lot of gang members.
Okay.
So I respect the work. I just don't trust when government is involved.
So how many different type of ceasefires are going on in LA that you know of?
You know, I was going to write a list, when I get a chance, write a list of every barrio that is agreed, every gang that is agreed. I don't know. I don't have a number on that, but I can tell you all the East Coast sets have a ceasefire with Florencia after that set. There's at least...
That's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. There's at least 7 East Coast sets. From the First Street to the 190s in Carson. Florencia actually has 3 separate areas. They're all on board. They have the area that's in Florence, the
Right.
original neighborhood. They got one in Hyde Park, and then they got one in Harvard Park. So all those Florences have a ceasefire with all the East Coast Crips. The East Coast Crips have another ceasefire with the Kitchen Crips. They've been at a war since 1980 or 81, and they ended that in late 2019. And now we have Inglewood Trece, Neighborhood Pyrus, Queen Street Bloods, and Inglewood. All 3 of those neighborhoods have a ceasefire. And then, now I can't say all, but most of the communities in Inglewood,
Right.
and Lenox, and the LAX area, all of the barrios have a ceasefire. Not, I shouldn't say all, most of them. And we're still building on that and trying to expand it into Carson, maybe go down into Gardena, and go all the way down to HA.
That's right.
And get all those neighborhoods on board too. But again, it's without the guys from prison supporting this, you know, it's not possible.
Right. So
Yeah, because it's got to be hard. It's kind of like, I know from a gang member, when somebody comes, back in the day when they would come to try to get a peace treaty, it's kind of like you're swallowing your pride. You know what I mean? As a gang member, you're like,
Oh, yeah, back in the
I
days,
don't
I'll
wanna
say-
do this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want these fools, but it's better, you know, for our kids.
well, back in the days, I'd be like, "Fuck that ceasefire, fuck that." You know, that's the mentality we had back
That's
then.
why we don't get along. Huh?
Yeah. but I think now, especially like guys like Sonny, me, guys who are older, it's like we gotta look into the future and look. This is what happens after you gangbang for so many years. And now these young guys are hopefully starting to turn that corner on that gangbanging thing, man.
But these young guys have that same mentality because
Yeah.
they're 18, 19, 20, and you know what it's like when you're that young.
Yeah, brother.
But the power of a guy in prison that says it's over is amazing.
But is that more for raza or is that with the brothers too? Because I mean, I'm not too. From what I see and have experienced, raza has always been much more structured.
That's true.
Where the brothers pretty much ran their own program.
That's true.
So are you guys having any issues with the brothers like that?
It is tough to get different black neighborhoods on board. I'm working on. I mean, I guess I'll tell a little bit about this. I'm working on something between the Black P Stones, which are Bloods, Black Gang,
Right.
the Rolling 20s, which are Bloods, a Black Gang, and the 18th Streets.
Wow.
They've been involved in a bloody war since 1993.
Yes.
I would say this. I don't want to rank these, so I take that back. I don't want to rank which wars are worse than others,
Yeah, of course.
right? Because I always want to say, as the Florencias and the East Coasters, if these two areas can come together, because that was a bloody war. Many people were murdered in the last 20 years between
Yes,
these areas.
yes.
And if they can come to a
Anything's
ceasefire,
possible.
then any neighborhoods can come together.
I
I don't
agree.
think there's, in the last 20 years, there has been nothing more violent than the East Coasters and the Florencia Treses going back at each other.
Agreed.
So I say that because the 18th Streets, they've been pretty active
Yeah.
against the Bloods. And the Bloods been very active against the 18th Streets. And this is an area that I'm very familiar with because I grew up in this area.
How long have they been warring?
93, it started in the jungles.
Okay.
It started in the jungles when some 18th Streets moved into that area because the jungles have always been predominantly black.
Right.
As most of these neighborhoods, the demographics have changed, and there are more Latinos that live in the jungles. But there were no Latino gangs, so 18th Street tried to set up a spot. It was okay. There was no problem that they were there.
Right.
But then they tried to serve and sell dope, and that's where the problem came.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Bloods from the jungles was like, y'all can be here, but y'all are not selling dope here. And then the guy from 18th Street actually said, "This is my hood too," and that's what started it. And that was '93.
And here we go.
They ended up shooting him in the face, and it's been back and forth ever since.
Right.
And then now, for those who don't know, the Black P Stones have two different sets. They have the jungles, then they have what's called the City Stones,
Okay.
which are right down the street. The City Stones got dragged into their war like the following year because someone from 18th Street killed the City Stone. And then the Rolling 20s are right next to the City Stones, and then they got dragged into it like maybe 97.
Okay.
So it started in the jungles in 93. By the time you get to 96, 97, you have 3 full-fledged blood gangs warring with 18th Street.
Nice.
And they've been going back and forth ever since. So I would love to see a ceasefire between these 3 blood gangs and 18th Street, and it's been a challenge.
Now that we're on the subject, I want to pick your brain. Because I've actually wanted to discuss this with you. Jamil Shaw case.
Jamil Shaw,
Jamil Shaw case. The guy from 8th Street ended up getting a death penalty.
PEDRO Espinoza.
PEDRO Espinoza. I have my own thoughts on it. Do you think it was racially motivated or do you think it was gang related?
I believe that the shooting was 100% gang related. I don't think race played any role in it. This is what they do. 18th Street shoot who they perceive to be a blood.
Pretty much.
Blood shoot who they perceive to be 18th Street. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But there was a lot of evidence that Jamil Shaw was claiming.
Yeah, you got pictures of the kid.
You got pictures of the kid.
Right?
Back then, MySpace was big. On his MySpace page, he actually had 18th Street Killer.
Yes.
And then he wrote some blood stuff. I'm not trying to smear his name or
No,
anything like
no.
that. Rest in peace to Jamil Shaw Jr.
Absolutely.
And, Jamil Shaw Sr. and his mom grieved tremendously when they
course.
lost their son. He was only 17 when he got killed in 2008. But what I didn't like was the father turned it into a cause to challenge illegal immigration.
Yes.
Now, the fact of the matter is Pedro Espinoza was born in Mexico. But he came to LA when he was like 4.
Yeah.
So this guy knows nothing about Mexico.
Yeah, he was raised here.
Had never even been to Mexico before. So now all of a sudden he's a quote-unquote illegal immigrant.
Right.
Technically, he's not an illegal immigrant. He was brought here from his mother. So when you're under the control of someone else, you cannot call that 3-year-old or 4-year-old, however old he was, the immigrant. Immigrant or immigration is a verb. It's something that you do.
Right.
He is the son of immigrants,
right?
And he was part of the immigration movement. But you cannot blame a 4-year-old for where he's at and where he's going. Because the way the media made it sound is like he was 16 when he came into LA. Right? He came to LA when he was like a grown teenager and then joined the gang. And I'm like, no, the dude went to school in LA.
Right.
He started kindergarten here. He is Los Angeles through and through. But they wanted to push that narrative, and to a certain degree they were successful.
They were very successful.
Yeah. So you can imagine how I'm looking. I'm like, wow, the stuff they're saying. So it kind of made me rebel against the media and rebel against the news.
Of course.
And then I had to, a certain degree, rebel against the family. I'm like, you guys are lying.
Well, I think the parents' pain of losing, and you've seen it plenty of times, we've all seen it. Parents, whoever lose somebody, we always look for somebody to blame. We look for somebody to blame. These people are hurting. They're saying he's throwing up Star Trek signs. No, he's not throwing. He's throwing up.
Saw that story? Huh?
Yeah, I saw the whole story. He's throwing up gang signs, man. And I think they looked for somebody to blame, and then the politicians got behind them and said, "We're going to run with them. We're going to use these people." And that's what they did. They used the father to sit there and make him push the narrative of illegal immigration.
But I think that happens with a lot of kids that get killed. It doesn't matter. It's just they'll make that kid just like he was an angel. He was just an angel. He didn't do nothing wrong. He didn't have this coming. I'm not saying he did, but a lot of people in the media does that to a lot. I don't know if it's just to nail the other guy that did it.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
And then also we always want to make the victim look good.
Yeah.
So and then also it's part of, you got to understand, they're going to prosecute a case. You're influencing a possible future jury.
Yes.
That's what this is all about. But there's an interesting story about that the thing you just mentioned about the parents saying that it was a Star Trek.
Right.
Okay, that was a KTLA news story. I actually was responsible for that news story.
Okay.
But I didn't want to be in the news story. I think they put a picture of me. I don't remember what it was. But I think it was at KTLA. No, it was Fox 11 maybe. I forget. But they asked me, I had wrote an article about my position on that shooting.
Okay.
And they reached out to me. I had a lot of media contacts. And I said, look, let's just do a story. And this is what the story should be. Let's look at the opposite side. Let's look at maybe I'm right. So that journalist actually confronted the family with the photos.
That's right.
Nobody was doing that. They were just accepting the family narrative.
Right.
So I told this journalist, if you're going to do this, this is how you should do it. Ask these parents, what does this mean? Ask them, what was your son doing? Because the message out there should be, look, kids, gangbanging can get you killed.
Yes, sir.
Not getting shot because you wore a red Spider-Man backpack. That was actually the narrative in the trial.
Yeah.
So that KTLA story, I thought she did a good job where she made the parents answer those questions, and I think they looked silly.
Yeah, they said Star Trek
or
something.
Can I ask you something, Alonso? Your personal opinion. How come one case, like the Shaw one, and another case get so much publicity on one, and the other one is just, who cares?
Look, if Pedro Espinosa was actually born in Los Angeles, we would never heard of Jamil Shaw.
Yeah.
Also, another part that why this case was really popular is because Jamil Shaw was a star football player.
Yeah,
right.
He was one of the best football players in that whole section, in that whole league. And he had about 2 or 3 colleges looking at him, so he had a possible chance of playing school at maybe a Division II college. So I think there's a combination of things. The people who are against immigration, they had something to attach onto. And then we have this perfect victim that he's a football player. He doesn't have a history of, he doesn't have an arrest record. He didn't have like this long juvenile or YA history.
Right.
He was actually a good kid, but he hung out with the homies in the hood, and he was a good squabbler, and he was claiming.
Right. Yeah.
But he wasn't one of those dudes that was in and out of juvenile hall. So technically, the media can say, "Look, we have this kid here who's never been to jail before, never been in trouble, no convictions, and he's a star football player." But on the other hand, we got this guy Pedro Espinosa,
not even from America.
Right.
Just got out of jail the day before on a gun on a gun arrest. Just got out of that county jail. So it was just like a perfect storm for one of these stories to go viral, I think.
No, it worked great for them because I think Trump even had him at one of his rallies, at one of his things. He had Jamil Shah's father there, and he's pushing them. Yeah,
Yeah, but this is like 2016. 8 years later, they're resurrecting this case.
They're still using it.
And then still using it. Yeah, Jamil Shaw Sr., the father, was on the campaign trail with Donald Trump in 2016.
Oh, wow.
Pushing that anti-immigrant rhetoric, you know?
Yeah.
They're trying to use it to do the immigration and get some of the
Jew back.
and get some of the black vote in there at the same time.
Yeah.
It's more divide. It's more divide.
And it works sometimes because there's a lot of debate about immigration into the United States, and some people are for it, some people are against it. Some people want to say illegal immigration. I hate calling someone an illegal immigrant. It's just this seems inhumane,
Right.
to say, oh, this 8-year-old kid is an illegal, you know?
Let me ask you this: what's your thoughts? Should the county jail be able to check immigration status when you're getting released?
Well, because immigration is a federal issue, the feds can do it. In fact, the feds actually have an office in the county jail.
Yeah.
So it's not the responsibility for the LA County sheriffs who run the county jail to do that. It's the feds. If they did it, then what? Okay, let's just say the sheriff does check immigration status. Now they say, okay, we got 300 guys here that are not citizens. Now what?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Some
can't fly them back.
law-abiding citizens will say, okay, they're illegal, deport them.
But the deportation is a federal process.
Right.
They get it, put them on a plane and fly them back. That process is not in structure for the county sheriff to do it. So the county sheriff is saying, if we can't deport anyways, why even check?
Yeah, because they don't get the funds to do it.
They don't even have the funds to do it.
Yeah, they don't have the funds.
That is that's a federal issue. So the feds have an office in the LA County Jail. So what could happen is the sheriff can check, and they can tell the feds that are right there, hey, all these guys are not documented. And then the feds make a decision. This is really where it gets crazy. They'll look at whoever's on the list and pick and choose.
Right.
All right, we'll deport him. Because it's also a money thing, too. They got to pay for all these deportations. So I don't think the feds are really serious about deporting all these guys, because most of them are low-level offenders anyways.
Right.
It's just every once in a while that one guy ends up killing.
Right.
It's that one. How many people since Pedro Espinoza in 2008, that was 12 years ago, have we heard of now that has killed someone else that's not a U.S. citizen in L.A.?
No, in L.A., no. The one you had was in San Francisco.
There's one in San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah. And
He said he would do it again.
No, that guy got deported like 15, 20
No,
times.
but he said he would do it again, and he was straight to court. I'll do it again.
No, but he beat his case.
He did, huh?
Yeah,
did he
he
kill
did.
someone on a pier?
Yeah, he said that he dropped the gun. The gun went
Yeah.
off. Shot the girl in the head, and he got a sympathetic
That's
jury.
an interesting case.
They gave him, I think, 2 or 3 years for the gun, and then they're just going to deport him. So that fool got lucky.
Now, I'm sure we might get fact-checked on this. I don't want to say Pedro's the last person to get charged with a murder in L.A. County. But whatever that list is, it is short.
Right.
It is very short, you know. So I don't think the feds look at it as a major issue unless it has to do with international terrorism.
So I saw one of your posts soon after that East Coast truce with Florencia. I saw Florence hit up, and I saw East Coast Crip hit up. What were your feelings when you saw that hit up with nobody crossing each other out?
I was just trying to show, because I was the first one to actually do a video to talk about this truce, the ceasefire. We should call it a ceasefire. And a lot of people didn't believe me. They was like, that's not even true.
Right.
Why are you spewing all this false
I saw
stuff?
that
And I'm
shit.
like, it's real. I was at the meetings. I was there. I saw this. So I decided, let me take some pictures of the graffiti to see if the graffiti will convince some of the people. And I don't know, I forgot what the comments were, but the graffiti was an example of showing there's East Coast, Florencia graffiti not crossed out. One didn't cross out the other didn't cross out the other, you know. So it kind of shows that they're existing together.
So without going into too much detail of how the peace process is going with these gentlemen, are they like, do they talk every week, every month? I mean, how are they handling this? This I'm saying just so we can kind of learn from it and see what we can take from it.
Yeah, the way that it's going right now is that they have an ongoing dialogue where they decide to have meetings on certain dates. I just heard that there was a meeting. Was it late last month or early this month? Just to talk, just to say, hey, this is what's going on, and also, even though it's a ceasefire, there have been a couple of problems.
Oh yeah, they're going to be scrimmages.
There was a couple of problems, but they have an understanding that if there's a problem, that doesn't mean all-out war.
That's right.
We're gonna come back to the table, figure out who's responsible, who did what, and address it. So it's an ongoing dialogue, and I'm not sure what the how often they meet, but I know it took. They had 3 meetings in September, October, November of 2019. It was like 3 meetings. The first meeting, the first face-to-face was mid-September. And you need to have an ongoing dialogue to keep the ceasefire going.
Of course.
With the Inglewood 13s, we've decided we're going to have a meeting at the last week of every month.
Okay.
We met, let me see, how many times did we meet? I believe we had 3 or 4 face-to-face meetings in a 2 to 3 month period. I think maybe January was the first face-to-face meeting. But now we don't have to meet every week. We don't got to see each other every week because people's got busy schedules.
Of course.
But we still got to continue the dialogue. So once a month is going to be how often those guys meet.
That's right. So where do you think this thing's going with the peace? You think it's going to just keep spreading, hopefully?
I think that we've entered a new era in Los Angeles gang politics that we've never seen before. Yes, there have been ceasefires before. There have been truces. And all of those in the past have been important. They kind of laid the foundation, laid the work down. But now we have more ceasefires going on right now probably than ever before in LA history. If we count up all these neighborhoods, it's probably like 20.
Right.
And we have ceasefires that include neighborhoods that have really been going at it. So I just think it's going to continue. Hopefully the brothers in prison continue to support it,
right.
Which they are. That group is growing. The guys in prison, that group is growing. So I think it's just going to continue.
Do you think social media has any play in this, and everybody sees their neighborhood now? Because before you just hear of these guys, but you don't see them on camera. You don't see who they are, so you kind of don't know how they interact with each other. You think social media has helped or has hindered?
I think social media will help get the news out there. Because I would tell these guys, at a certain point, we got to make this public. We got to let everyone know. With the Florencia East Coast thing, I was like, I got to do a video on this.
Right.
And I know I'm not going to get any Florencias on camera.
Right.
But I at least got to get some of the other players that can speak on behalf of what happened on both sides. So that's when I did that video that had Little Doc from East Coast.
Yeah, I saw that.
And some of the other guys that were in these meetings. And I wanted to put that out there because once people see this and once people are convinced that it happened, then there's hope for my neighborhood, my area, and for other areas to kind of join in.
Well, that's what Avenue Baby was talking about.
Yeah,
He said, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was busted when they had the peace treaties back in the 90s. I was gone.
Yeah.
But I used to hear things. It was like, hey, did you hear that cop got busted for doing a drive-by on so-and-so's neighborhood too? Do you guys figure that might happen? I don't know if it was true. I just heard that some cops had gotten arrested for doing shootings in rival neighborhoods to start the war again. Are you guys scared of that here? This happening?
Well, they've already addressed all of this. One of the things we're concerned about is the graffiti on the wall. Because anybody can write East Coast Crip, Florencia 13 killer.
Right.
Yeah.
That don't mean the East Coast dude wrote that or vice versa. So what we do now, we have a system in place where we take a picture of it and then we send it around to everybody to find out, did one of your people write this? Yeah. Because a lot of times they're not going to put their name on it.
But they know the homie's writing.
They know the homie's writing.
Yeah.
So they can figure it out. Sometimes it was one of the little homies that just was in his feelings and wrote it,
Right.
But other times they're like, hey, we don't know who wrote that. So we don't know. Maybe the police might try to instigate conflict because they've been known to do that in the past.
Yeah.
Or even other rival sets who don't get along in our internet.
Exactly. It could be a rival set to say, hey, let's write East Coast Killer.
Yeah.
So this what happened back in the 90s is actually helping what's happening now.
Well, it lets us know that anything's possible. You know, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I don't think the police are going to start shooting up people under, you know.
Like I said, I don't know if it's true. This is what I hear that so-and-so got busted.
I mean, there's been rumors that police have been involved in shootings where they were acting like gang members in the past. I can't prove that, unfortunately. I've just heard the rumors, and I've heard the rumors going all the way back to the 80s.
Because I know people would really want to sabotage something like that. You know, they see something going good, they want to sabotage it. It's kind of like the trolls.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what they do.
Pretty much. Hey, let's talk a little bit what we were talking about when we first got in here. Gang injunctions. Do you think they were a good thing, a bad thing?
Oh man, that's a tough. You have to put it in context. Gang injunctions. I've always looked at them as a negative thing because it's a violation of your rights as a human being. It's not illegal to be in a gang. There's no law against being a gang member. But they decided, and they knew that. They said, well, how can we prosecute gang members who are not breaking the law?
Right.
Well, let's come out with a gang injunction. So that's really what it is. It's a way to harass gang members who are not breaking the law. Because if you're a gang member out there and you're shooting and you're robbing and you're stealing, you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
You're going to go to prison. But there's a lot of gang members, homies, that just want to hang out, drink, get high, maybe fight a little bit, low-level stuff. In and out. You ain't getting 20 years for, hanging out.
Right.
But the police and the authorities want to get rid of everybody. So it was designed as a way to try to remove all gang members off the street, regardless if you're committing crimes or not. Because most of the time when the police pull up, there's a group of 10 guys on the corner. They're not doing anything illegal.
Right.
Maybe they got a joint in their pocket. Maybe one guy might have a gun on him. But for the most part, you can't arrest all 10 of those dudes.
Right.
But with the injunction, they're all going to jail.
Yeah. See, me, I always thought, and I do think it did have some good points. They did change things. But at the same time, it just moves that problem to a different street.
There was a big displacement argument that came.
And people are getting killed because of that displacement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I seen it with my own eyes.
You're right, because the early injunctions created a safety zone for each area. For example, in Elmwood, the safety zone was really small. It was the size of the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
So that means all I gotta do is walk a couple blocks away and you can't touch me.
Right.
But when they did the injunction against the avenues over in Northeast LA,
right,
they created a safety zone that was 9 square miles that went all the way almost north to Occidental College and came all the way down to the LA River and actually included Highland Park neighborhood, Cypress Park neighborhood, and Dogtown. Yeah. So they couldn't go anywhere, unless they just completely left Northeast LA.
Right.
So that's one of the things that changed as the injunction process, as they got more educated on it. Because what you just said was true. We just go out the safety zone. We're just going to go over here. And you could walk outside of Elmwood safety zone. It was very small. You could walk outside Playboy Gangsta Crips safety zone. It was very small. So the city attorneys was just like, you know what? We're going to just make these huge safety zones to try to combat the displacement effect.
But I think if you look at it now, the gang injunctions, as far as the police and the criminal justice system, it fucking worked for them because, dude, you guys were controlling the shadow blocks, all these hoods that had gang injunctions. You got 30, 40 motherfuckers sitting out there partying in people's regular neighborhood.
Yeah, but now that I think about it, I've had time since we had our interview.
Yes.
I kind of think maybe it's more cameras than anything that's changed everything.
Oh, that's
I think
now.
It's probably changed more than the actual gang injunctions because now as soon as something pops, you're caught.
Yeah.
They have cameras everywhere now, and that's been since a little bit after the gang injunction.
You guys, they took you off that block. Echo Park, they're off those blocks. A lot of these neighborhoods that got those gang injunctions, those hoods are off those blocks, dude. Those gang injunctions, whether you like them or not, they worked. And me knowing, because I'll be chilling in front of an apartment, bumping. One of the neighbors comes out and tells me to turn the radio on. I'm fuck you, straight up. That's the way we live. So could you imagine these poor people that are renting places, living there, and the cops like, we can't do anything. So they made these gang injunctions, got them out of there. It's good that they're gone now, but I think at the time, dude, the numbers were crazy in the fucking 90s.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it was the gang injunctions, Gil.
I think it was a mixture of everything, but I think the gang injunctions
Because
definitely helped.
one of the things that I looked at with the injunctions, when you look at the first 10 years of gang injunctions, let's say from 1987 to 1997, and this is not to disrespect any gang, but the injunctions in the first 10 years weren't even against the most violent gangs.
Right.
There were no injunctions against the Rolling 60s Crips. There was no injunction against them until the 2000s. There was no injunction against 18th Street. There was no injunctions against a lot of these neighborhoods. But then, when you get to the late 90s, early 2000s, crime was already dropping. So, for example, when they did the injunction in San Fernando against Vario Sanfer,
Right.
we looked at the crime. I forget what year that was, but crime had been dropping for 6 straight years in that area.
Right.
And we argued, why do you want to bring injunction to a community where crime is already down? And everyone was like, yeah, we don't. And a lot of the community want injunctions because they own property around there. They don't want to be in a community and have the stigma of, we live in a gang injunction area. But they passed it anyways. So then what happens, crime continues to go down while the injunction's in place. And then you say, it's because of the injunction. But if you looked at the 6 years previous, crime was already dropping in that Sanfer area. And I think crime was already dropping in a lot of these neighborhoods. They got slapped with injunctions. It kind of looked like, crime is going down. The homies ain't hanging out anymore. And I think there was other factors that made crime drop. And I wouldn't want to put so much of it on the gang injunction itself, because it's not until you get into the 2000s you start to see these massive injunctions now.
Right.
They want to put an injunction on the avenues, 15 years after the avenues would already wreaked havoc.
Right.
It's quiet over there.
Yes,
it's been quiet over there, but now they want to put an injunction on it.
I gotta say, for my neighborhood, actually the crime was escalating, but it wasn't until they started placing the cameras in there that things started to really change. It wasn't just, it was, the injunction, but like I said, we just moved a couple blocks over and stuff popping. But when they got those cameras in, they started putting cameras around. That's when it started to.
I think it had to do
when they get cracked
with the injunctions, 3 strike laws. They started cracking down, giving everybody in the 90s. You got 20. You went from the 7 years in the 80s. By the early 90s, you're looking at maybe a manslaughter. Then 94, you're 15 to life, 25 to life. Now you're looking at 45 to life. So I think they started locking a lot of people up, and that's why the crime went down.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, there's so many factors.
Yeah, it's a lot of factors.
So many factors. I mean, I guess you cannot ignore that when your homie gets 75 years for murder, that's not going to have you thinking, right?
No.
Brother.
But that's kind of sad that we have to, incarcerate people for 70-something years. There's got to be easier ways to get us to think differently,
right?
Than that our homie just got washed up. For 70-something years, where 20 years ago he would have only got 20 years for that. Because they're giving you 25 for the murder, 25 for the gun, and then 25 for the gang allegation. Right. So you can literally get 75 years if the judge wants to give you all 3 of them. But that's definitely had to have an impact on other homies. That say, "Hey, man, I'm done."
No, but with your camera thing right now, technology, dude. To be a drug dealer, to be a banger on the street, technology has far exceeded all that, man. Back in the days when you're getting busted on, what are you doing? You're fucking ducking. Nowadays, fuckers are getting their phone and trying to take a picture of it, and fucking they tap every single phone. They listen to everything. I mean, nowadays, if you want to sell dope, you're gonna go to jail.
Well, you know what I noticed too is a lot. At least with my neighborhood, I know. When all that started to happen. You used to get homies that got busted for shootings or whatever, did whatever. They would get busted. They'd be out in a couple years, 2 years, 3 years, they're out.
Yeah.
And then it started to get to the point where they would get busted for something so small, stretch them out. Like people like me, it was like, okay, you got to stretch them out. And it kind of locked up all the players, the real players that were really about that were all getting locked up, and they're all starting to get out now. That's kind of the way I see it. It's kind of like all the real hitters were the ones that did getting a time back in between 90s and now.
Right.
But the gang injunction is not designed for the real hitters. It's designed. It's actually nuisance abatement, which is designed for the guy that's just hanging on the corner drinking a beer,
playing his music too loud,
or maybe he's on the corner selling a little bit of weed, just doing the basic stuff. 'Cause your heavy hitter is going to get caught. If you're a heavy hitter and you're a consistent heavy hitter and you've been doing that for years, you can only last so many years.
Have the gang injunctions, did the Supreme Court or somebody rule on it that they're illegal?
Well, it wasn't. It actually went to the California Supreme Court in 1997, and they ruled that certain things were illegal. And one of the early injunctions, and probably the one in Elmwood, had it where you couldn't have a pager or a cell phone. So the California Supreme Court said that is a direct violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So you got to take certain things out. So James Hahn at the time said, okay, I'll modify it so that it could pass, the Supreme Court tests, the constitutionality test. So he took out, stuff that had to do with cell phones and beepers. Remember, beepers were big at the time, pagers, and then it passed. It narrowly in '97. I think it went like a 5-4 vote.
Right.
And boom, we've been stuck with injunction since '97 until 2018 when another panel decided to shoot them down, and now they're not used in Los Angeles.
They're not used at all then.
Not used at all.
Okay, I didn't know that.
In Los Angeles, though, they are used outside of Los Angeles, outside of LA County, in other cities. I believe up in the Bay Area. I believe Arizona. And it started in LA, so a lot of other cities actually copied the LA injunction model. And
It's not gone all the way to Chicago. Dude.
well, Chicago had they had a thing similar, but in terms of the LA model, it went to Phoenix, it went to San Diego, it went to Oakland, it went to San Francisco. It may have even went to Nevada. I'm not sure, but yeah, LA, they're not enforcing them anymore.
What do you say? I just thought about this. I was remembering. I think you did the interview in Hawaii with so I forgot what gang, it was, a Crip or something out there.
I did one with a guy
gangs in Hawaii?
from Halava.
Yeah, there you go.
Halava Projects.
And some people were like, and they'll say that about different individuals that you do interviews with. Oh, they ain't about that. Oh, they ain't this. What would you say to people who think that just because you're in LA, that's where the gang shit's at? But all these other places, it's the same structure, or what's their mindset on it?
Well, a lot of people thought that, why are there gangs in Hawaii? Isn't that the place
There's really gangs in
paradise?
Oh,
Yeah. But here, look, think of this. The most paradise city in America is Los Angeles.
Oh.
Beaches, palm trees, weather,
Celebrities.
cars, celebrities, and we got the most entrenched gang culture in America. So that's what I tell people.
Yeah.
But even when I do these interviews like in Compton and we're outside going through the neighborhood, you see the comments. Wow, that neighborhood looks nice.
Yeah.
Look at those houses back there. So there's just like this false belief that the way that a community looks should dictate how the gangs are, which is, there's no correlation. It's, these neighborhoods remember, these houses were built decades ago.
Right.
The community was built decades ago. And most of these neighborhoods where you see gangs were old white communities, really. So people that are watching these videos, don't get it twisted that just because a community has houses doesn't mean that there's not social problems in those neighborhoods.
That's right.
And Hawaii is no different. Hawaii has one of the biggest meth crystal ice problems. Everyone's on crystal ice. You ever watch Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Yes, sir.
Where do you think that show takes place?
Yeah,
where he's
no
catching
shit.
all these dudes on ice.
That's right.
It takes place in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Say you got busted. Say you went to jail. What car are you claiming?
Oh, that's a good one.
What car are you claiming?
Man,
That's a good one.
I've had this conversation in private many times, and my answer is not possible. The answer that I give, it's not possible once you're in the CDC. But this is what I'm gonna do. If I end up going to prison, I'm gonna tell you straight up. I'm gonna contact the people that I know in Miami that know me on the streets and say, look, I got love for you guys, but I got love for the brothers over here too. And I think that a lot of those dudes that are high up in Miami that I can talk to personally, I can call them right now on the phone, will respect me and just say, leave Alex alone. He's valuable to us. And I'd be in there becoming a lawyer, doing all the legal work. But I'm going to hang out with the blacks that I grew up with in Los Angeles as well. I grew up in an area where there's a black gang and a Mexican gang.
Okay.
So I'm gonna hang out with both sides. Of course, people are gonna say you got to pick a side.
Right.
Hey, I'm gonna figure out a way, and I'm gonna get those in power to advocate for my position.
That's right.
Because I'm not a divider. You know,
you're not.
I'm not a divider. I want to see everybody getting along, and that's a crazy question because it would be challenging for me because I have a lot of black friends that I went to school with, but I also have a Latino background as well. So it's kind of tough. On the East Coast, those issues don't even exist.
Yeah, don't exist.
Right.
But in California, it's like you got to choose one side or the other side. Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that, and they think like, especially out of the state, they think all Sureños we're just racist. They just think because whatever the prison politics is racial, and they don't know it's pretty much just gang boundaries. It's the same thing like with the Jamaican shop. Yeah, you're just banging.
Yeah.
He's an enemy. I'm gonna get him. That's it.
That's just what it is, and and it's unfortunate. I was watching some videos about the politics in the California prison, and some people think it's never going to change. Like that's just how it's going to be. But
It's already changing.
I think it's going to change. And you know what's changing it? Is these integrated yards. Have you heard about these integrated yards?
Yes.
Where they're combining the SNY.
Program yards. Program
yeah.
yards.
And some of these guys on these SNY yards that are now being integrated, they're gangbanging just as hard as the other neighborhoods are. So now it's like the balance of power is slowly shifting to where like who's in charge. Now we all knew who's in charge for the last many years, but we know everything doesn't last forever.
That's right.
Things change, and I'll be the first one to say it. I don't think the Mexican mafia is going to be controlling the California prisons forever.
Right.
Something's going to change, and I think the guards I believe that this integrated yard policy is instituted by the COs in a way to take power away from the other groups that have a lot of power,
right?
And to try to give some of that power to some of these other groups.
Yeah, that's going to be some interesting thing going on there because I don't know if those other groups are going to come back and try to use their muscle and try to do stuff on the streets. So it's a complicated situation right there.
Because who knew that the Fresno Bulldogs would be pushing their weight around like they've been doing? But they've been getting their ass beat a few times too. But they're maintaining.
Yeah, for sure.
They're trying to establish themselves as a dominant group.
You know, I've never seen on your channel, or maybe I've missed one. Have you ever done anything with Norteño?
No, but a couple of them have reached out to me, and again, it's like me being busy with my schedule.
Right.
It'll happen. It'll happen eventually.
So what do you got going on right now? I saw you're gonna start doing another. I know you're doing the Gangster Chronicles, which I'm a big fan of, by the way.
Yeah, that Gangster Chronicles.
When's what's his name getting out?
Reggie Wright Jr. should be getting out. Well, his official release date is February 2021, but the feds have a thing where you could take advantage of some programs, get some time cut off. So he might get out in August or September of this year.
He's in a federal camp?
He's in a federal camp at Water.
Is he running cop or is he running black?
I don't know what he's doing there.
We were talking about that, like, if he was Raza and he went in and he was a cop, he got something common.
Is that right?
Yeah, we were talking about that, yeah.
The blacks, I was in there and there was a black guy, he was a cop. And everybody knew, nobody touched him. I was like a little surprised.
I'll give you an example. When you're La Raza and you kill a kid, it's a rap for you.
Oh, yeah, yes.
But I'll give you an example. Luis Maciel, Pelon from El Monte, Flores. He was involved in the El Maxon Street murders in El Monte.
Yeah, I remember.
A 5-year-old got killed. A 6-month-old got killed. Now they did kill Jimmy the character when he got to San Quentin.
Right.
Immediately.
Yes.
I was buzzing with them. I know.
But Luis Maciel, who orchestrated the whole thing, is still alive and well.
Yeah.
And this is what I think happens. You have certain people that will bat for you.
Right. To
say, hey, this guy did that on his own. Even though this guy was responsible, we're going to give him a pass. And the same thing happened to the guys from Avenues that shot that baby in the back seat. They killed, They wanted their heads. But because the Avenues are so influential in La M, a couple of guys said, look, there was an accident. They didn't mean to do it. And all 3 of those dudes got a pass.
Right.
So there's some exceptions to that. right?
Well, when that case, the thing that surprised me more about that case is that's the one when Bill Clinton came out and started talking about we can't have this gang violence, and I was like, wait a minute, man, there's been thousands of black and brown kids being killed before this. You got one white kid gets killed, now all of a sudden it's making the federal news.
And I think that the kid that got killed, his father was a tweaker.
Yes, that's what we heard.
That's the story, you know. So it's his fault that his daughter got killed in the back seat. I don't really blame those. I mean, those three dudes. Those three Avenue guys, you know, they're out there doing their thing as gang members, but I don't believe they're intended to go kill a 5-year-old.
Absolutely not.
You know,
Absolutely
that
not.
just happened in the course of dealing with this dude,
right?
That, you know, that pulled up. But nevertheless, you know, you killed a kid, you're supposed to get it.
So what's up with this new podcast you got going on? Talk to me about it.
That's just something that actually that was supposed to be the first podcast that I had been wanting to do, which is basically a narrative podcast on interesting cases and stories. In fact, the Maxon murders will be one of the ones I cover. Okay. Because I have all the information on it. I actually know a couple of people that know some of the people involved in that, and I got some good inside information on that story. I believe that was 1995 that happened in El Monte. Right. But I want to tell these interesting stories from Richard Ramirez, the serial killer. I knew that dude. Really? Yeah. I knew that guy. You know, I bumped into him many times. On the streets? On the streets. Oh, shit. Yeah. What kind of guy was he? He was a weirdo. A little bit. He was a panhandler. He'd always ask for money. Okay. You know, there was a 7-Eleven on 3rd and Kingsley where I would post up at sometimes in L.A., and he would pull up, you know, or walk up and just be asking. He was always by himself. He was a loner. And I want to do that story. And for people who don't know what that is, we're talking about the Night Stalker, right? The Night Stalker. I think that was 1985. That's when everybody started closing their windows, putting bars on their windows out here. And you know how he got caught, right? Yeah.
East LA.
Gang members caught him. Yep. They got a serial killer off the streets of Los Angeles. They whipped his ass. Yes, they did. That's right. That's right. So don't say that gang members can't do anything good. They did what the police been trying to do for all that summer. That's right. Yeah. So where can people find you? Where can people see you? Talk to us. Oh, man, just, you know, streetgangs.com is my website. I'm always on there. There's a forum on there that I post on regularly. You can find me on all social media platforms at Alex Alonso 101. Twitter, Facebook, and what's the other one called? Instagram. And Street TV, where I post my videos. I try to post something every week. That's right. Every week I'm trying to post something.
Got anything else coming out that you got planned like for the future?
There's always stuff. I'm writing the Craig Munson book right now. Craig Munson is one of the like pioneers of blood and cripping. You always hear about Raymond Washington, right? Yes, yes. Well, Craig Munson is the one that slapped Raymond Washington and told him to get out of his gang. Oh, is that right? Yeah. So Craig Munson has an incredible story that goes back to the 60s, and I'm just writing his story out right now. He did time, and he went to San Quentin for murder. Guess how much time he did? How much? I think he did 5 years. Wow. 5 years for a murder, and he beat someone to death in his house. Beat him to death, and then took the body and dumped it. He was a huge guy, right? Oh yeah, he was one of the first. That's where the lifting weights and getting buff comes from. Oh, is that what Craig Munson? You know, he's one of the only dudes that went to prison swole. He got to prison, he was already swole.
I seen that guy. A picture of that guy Tukey.
Oh my God, he was huge.
Tukey looked up to Craig Munson. Okay. Tukey was calling Craig Munson, "Hey, can I work out with you? Hey, I want to be buff like you. Hey, I want to, you know,
be buff like me."
So I'm working on that, and then I'm just going to try to get this other podcast going where I'm telling stories. That's right, brother. Well, you know what? I don't know what your time schedule is, so I just want to tell you I appreciate you coming through, man. This is some good thing.
Yeah, I enjoyed meeting you.
Thanks for having me, man.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
And, hey, I appreciate
You're
that.
You're the man.
And, you know, I couldn't say no because you did my platform before. And it's like, it's weird. Now, a lot of guys that I've interviewed have established their own platforms and are making a name for themselves. And I support all y'all, from Sticks to you to Av Baby. You know, everybody's doing their thing. Man, of course, brother. And I think we need more people
the more
to do
exposure, the better the outcome, right?
What do you mean?
Like
the more positive exposure.
Doing it, it's going to affect more people.
I think so. I mean, it just shows that where people are at in their lives right now. You know, who would have thought that this brother Gil, who went to YA for acting a fool, would, you know, have this beautiful home and doing this podcast and have the platform American Cholo going.
And have my old enemy sitting next to me.
And a rival right here at the table, you know.
We can still kick it off. We can still kick it off, though.
And you know, I support everyone that's doing platforms like that. You know, including Kev Mack. You know.
Well, you know what? Let's get that out the air, man. What's up with you and Kev Mack? People always thinking you guys are beefing.
Nah, I've known Kev Mack. I don't remember what year he got out of prison, but it was in the 90s. He got out of prison maybe 96, 97, and we've been acquainted with each other ever since.
That's right.
And then we met face to face maybe like early 2000s, and you know, we've had our differences, but you know, everything is cool.
That's right.
He's actually the one that introduced me to Nipsey Hussle.
That's right.
I did one of the first Nipsey Hussle interviews that's on the internet.
I fucking saw that, man. That was some great stuff.
I posted that in 2009, which would be what, 11 years ago. You know, it's not the first one. There's like, I think 2 other ones before that one.
How old was Nipsey when you got him in that?
I think he was 23 years old.
But he was speaking like a 50-year-old wise man, brother.
Yeah, Nipsey was ahead of his time, and I met him, I believe it was 2007. Kev Mack used to have a spot on Slauson, and I used to go over there and kick it.
That's right.
A little smoke shop.
Okay.
They had a smoke shop, and then one day I'm in the smoke shop, and look who walks in. It's Nipsey Hussle, but at that time, no one really knew who he was.
Yeah.
But he was known in L.A. because he had these mixtapes.
Right.
It was called Bullets Ain't Got No Name. And at the time that I met him, I think he did three of those mixtapes. I think Volume 1 was out. Maybe Volume 2 was out. And I actually tried to get Nipsey to be on this television show that I was working on for A&E. And it didn't work out, but I was trying to, and I believe that show was a 2007 show. So yeah, I met Nipsey in 2007, and actually maintained a relationship with him for maybe 4 or 5 years.
Right.
It got to a point where he got kind of big.
Yeah,
and
brother.
his phone number changed and couldn't get him on the line. But yeah, in those early years, 07, 08, 2009, 2010, 2011, you know, I called Nipsey up.
When you did the interview with him, were you a little bit in awe when you're hearing the guy talk, or did you not know he was that much ahead of his time, or when you saw the videos?
I was expecting that because I had already had conversation with him before the interview.
Okay.
You know, I was already like, oh, okay, this guy's on point. This guy's
Right,
sharp. And
right.
plus, I mean, a lot of people underestimate the brilliance that comes out of our ghettos.
That's right.
And our neighborhoods. So I just did an interview with a guy named Hoodie Hood from San Diego. And I was actually in awe when I did the interview with Hoodie Hood because I hadn't known him.
Right.
And this guy is talking to me on a very intellectual level.
That's right.
You know, I had already knew Nip. In fact, I had knew Nip for over a year. We did that interview in 09.
Right.
And I had been trying to interview him since 07.
Okay.
But, you know, his people said that they weren't ready to do any interviews yet. So
Right.
by the time we did the interview in 2009, I'd already known him maybe a year and a half
Okay.
or almost 2 years at the time. But yeah, we have a lot of brilliance in our communities. We have a lot of bright minds.
That's right.
Unfortunately, most of America wants to throw a lot of these guys under the bus.
Yeah.
What catches your attention when you're looking for somebody to interview?
I'm not really looking for anything specific because I believe that everyone has a story to tell. You know, I'm not looking for the biggest, baddest, the most down guy. I mean, you could have been a side player, but you were there and you have a story and you went through something. So I just want to tell as many stories as possible. That's what my channel is about. So I'm not really looking for anything in particular. I mean, you could be from San Diego, Las Vegas,
Hawaii.
Hawaii. I actually like that interview.
Well, next time you do an interview in Hawaii, I'll help you. Just take me.
Well, a lot of these interviews I do out of state is usually when I'm already there on business.
Okay.
Except if they fly me out. I got flown out to Houston.
Really?
Yeah. And if you want to fly me out and get me a rental car and a hotel, and
We'll do it.
I will come to your city.
That's right.
But I was in Hawaii presenting. I was actually doing a paper on officer-involved shootings for a conference that I was at, and I presented this paper. And I said, well, since I'm going to be in Hawaii for like 4 days, let me find some people to interview.
Does your wife ever worry about you going to any of these places?
She wants me to quit. She thinks that, and I always say I'm going to retire. I said I was going to retire like 2 years ago.
Oh, you're too young to retire.
And then I was going to retire last year. And I just love doing it.
Some tells me you're not gonna retire.
Nah, I mean,
It's not work if you love it.
even if I stop for like a month or two, I'm like, damn, I want to interview somebody.
That's right.
I want to get someone's story, you know. I mean, I could try to retire, but then there's always something that pulls me back. And someone will call me up and say, hey, Alex, I got this guy I want you to interview. Who? Oh, yeah, let's do it, you know.
That's right.
But I don't have to do this anymore.
Of
I really
course
don't. I have enough jobs already on my table, on my
right.
plate. I love doing it, and I'm sure I'll slow down eventually.
How do your boys feel about it?
You know, my boys are starting to get recognized at school.
Okay.
My son, he's in the 10th grade. He said this guy came up to him and said, hey, anything you need, anything, I got you, man, because I've been following your dad for years. And this is guys in high school.
All right.
So I don't know really what they think about it, that they tell me funny stories of people knowing who I am in their schools.
Well, you're a celebrity in your own right.
I'm just, I look at myself as a researcher and an educator. You know, all my years as a professor, most of the time we don't, professors aren't considered celebrities. We're professors. Although there are some well-known celebrities like Cornel West.
Right.
But we're educators. I don't even think Cornel West would even want that.
Well, people walk up to you and want to take pictures with you.
All the time.
Have they ever asked for autographed?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you're a celebrity.
More times, most of the time they want a photo.
Yeah,
But every once in a while.
You're a celebrity, dog.
Yeah.
Well, to be completely honest with you, Alonso, like you said, you'd come on our platforms because we've been on yours. You don't have to. A lot of people just won't do it. And what you're doing, brother, it's a great thing. You're definitely one of the first guys who ever done it, and I think that especially LA owes this guy a great deal of gratitude, man. Straight up.
What do you mean some people won't do it?
Like, let's say if you ask somebody and reach out, they won't come on the platform. So,
well, I mean, I can't hate on people. I turn people down all the time.
Right.
I just got a call yesterday from FX, the network FX.
Yeah.
They got a show that's coming out, and they want me to be on the show. And after they explained a little bit to me, I said, nah, I'm okay.
Because you're working on bigger and better things.
I've heard you've turned down quite a few interviews or different things for different reasons.
I turned down Anderson Cooper. He wanted to interview.
Yeah,
Really?
that's what I heard you turned down.
Anderson Cooper.
Yeah. I just don't like the vibe that they have
The
around.
spin they were doing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. I actually heard you on the interview.
I turned down Larry King before he retired.
Yeah.
No
King
way.
too,
yeah.
Oh, come on, Alonso. You should have gotten Larry King, brother.
I just don't like you said, they spin it and they end up twisting what you're trying to say. Well, the thing is, I've done these shows before.
Right?
I was on the Anderson Cooper show once before.
Okay.
I didn't like the way it came out, so I'll never go again. So a lot of times you're on a show. Let's say you're on CNN. If Anderson Cooper wanted to have me on CNN to talk just the way we're talking,
Yes.
for 20 minutes, I'd do it.
Right.
But the way these shows are structured is they want you to be on a panel or come from via satellite where you're with 4 other people via satellite. There's 3 people in the studio. So you got 7 people. It's a 15-minute segment and everybody gets 30 seconds to a minute.
Right.
I don't have time for that.
Right.
I'm not going to the CNN studio to sit there for a 30-second soundbite.
Exactly.
I'd rather sit here with American Cholo and chop it up for an hour.
That's right, brother.
And talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Real shit.
Now, if Anderson Cooper wants to bring me on his show for 15, 20 minutes where it's just him and me or another person like Sonny, yeah. But I'm not going on a show with 9 people
That's right.
that gets 30 seconds to talk. So,
And then they're going to twist your words.
and then they'll twist your words when you do what's called a pre-recorded segment, which I did once before. I did a pre-recorded segment on MS-13 and on immigration, and I was just disappointed in the final product. So I was just like,
Hey, why do you think MS-13 got so huge and so quick?
well, I don't think they're that huge.
You don't think they're that big?
No, in terms of LA?
In terms of the world.
Oh, the
almost.
world.
Yeah.
Okay, well, every gang has satellite neighborhoods in all different cities.
Right.
What put MS on the map, and I'll say this, I don't think they're that big related to any other gangs. There's more Rolling 60s Crips in America in different cities than there's MS-13s.
Okay.
There are probably more, let's say, more Bounty Hunter Bloods in other cities than there's MS. But this is what happened with MS. MS got linked to 3 or 4 really violent crimes.
Right.
The one that happened in El Salvador was a shooting of a bus.
Okay,
that
yeah,
killed,
remember
like,
Yeah, I heard about that.
they said MS was responsible for that. I looked into that, and we're not even sure if that was MS, but like 20-something people died on that bus.
Right.
MS got stamped for that one. Then in Washington, D.C. area, they got labeled with a couple of murders there that we're not even sure if that was, looking into it. And then they got linked to international terrorists, which turned out to be false.
Right.
So when you have all of these things going on, the FBI is going to put you top on the list. And it was the FBI in 2006 that said MS-13 is the most dangerous gang in the world.
And they got the media coverage on
And
it.
they got the media coverage.
And then they got Trump talking about him.
They got Trump talking about him. Then they had this journalist named Lisa Ling do a National Geographic documentary about him.
Right.
But all she did was she cruised around the neighborhood here in L.A. with a couple of MS members and then said the most dangerous gang in the world. So I think they got a lot of bad press. I'm not even convinced that they're responsible for that massacre on the bus.
Right.
I found out about one of the incidents that happened in D.C. and it really wasn't like the way that it was printed. So, hey, just a bunch of things aligned and made MS the most popular gang in the world.
Right.
But are they really any different from any other gang? I don't think
No.
so.
Yeah, I've
All
heard
gangs
that.
are pretty much the same.
Yeah. So that's my whole take on that.
That's right. So, any last words, brother?
Man, I just appreciate you having me here, and I'm really impressed with your setup
Oh,
here.
thank you, man.
I think that you're going to inspire others to do, what everyone wants to do this, but they don't do it.
Right.
You are doing it, You're doing it, and a handful of others are doing it, and I just support everybody that's out there that's doing this type of work and showing the culture and showing all sides. There's a couple platforms that all they show is the negative.
Right.
The negative. It's kind of, you're not helping. You're not. There's no message there.
Right.
We've already seen that on Nightline many times.
Right.
But to get the history, to learn from people's experiences that have been to prison, to hear these stories, and anyone that's on that, I support it completely.